On the simulation DVD, you should find a hair advanced rendering PDF file. And this is basically a document Softimage Special Projects compiled for a client who was beginning to set up a hair production pipeline. And they were basically looking at doing large hair effects, basically a full creature with hairs numbering anywhere from 100,000 to 200,000 hairs. And so we thought it would be good to include this document on the DVD in order to give you transfer some of that knowledge in terms of setting up the pipeline. So you can find a section with the rendering analysis that basically goes over the important points. I'll actually just summarize them quickly so you have an idea. And if you want more info, obviously go into the PDF and you can get more details there. So the first thing to mention, and we've talked about this already, but if you're using shadows, detail shadow map is a good way to go. And it basically gives you the best quality because you're computing both the hair transparency and color. When calculating the shadow map, you'll get the best quality results. The downside is there is an increased memory demand because of the increased information found in the shadow map file, and the performance in terms of render times is hit a little bit. So in the production scene, we saw a performance decrease from 11 minutes to about 14 minutes. So again, it's a balance between the quality and the performance trade-off when deciding what to use there. Scanline versus motion rendering. Scanline uses a BSP acceleration technique to actually compute the render. So for that case, obviously you want to make sure if you're using Scanline to tune the BSP, and you can save yourself significant amounts of time in the render there. Rapid motion, conversely, doesn't use this kind of ray tree method for rendering, but rather uses a micro triangle tessellation technique where the hair is kind of broken up into micro triangles, and those are actually used to compute the final pixel color. So something to consider is as your hair gets thicker, that creates a lot more triangles, and this actually increases the memory usage quite a bit. So you want to be really careful with memory settings when using rapid motion. You do see a bit of performance increase over Scanline method, but again, you need to tune the scene to make sure you don't blow the memory there. So a few things you can use to optimize the memory is adjusting, say, the task size. And this basically controls how many pixels are used per tile. So by different techniques like Scanline versus rapid motion have different, maximal task sizes to use. So if you look into the doc and actually some of the rendering statistics, you can see actually what's the optimal task size to use for your rendering method. Hair transparency. So in the past, there was unlimited transparency depth, but in the current version, what we did was we locked the transparency depth to 250 levels, and this is in order to maximize the performance and efficiency. And it's a good idea when you're rendering your hair to limit the transparency use wherever possible. So it could involve only using transparency on the hair tips or other things like that. But it's something to keep in mind when you're tuning your system for rendering. Auto volume. Basically, the current hair shader, because it supports both a volume and geometry mode, it has the auto volume flag always enabled. And with auto volume on, this basically forces ray tracing to be on internally in mental ray, which can lead to performance degradation if you're using something like Scanline rendering. So there's a few things to suggest there. What you could do is use the hair geo shader, the separate shader, which doesn't have the auto volume flag on. Or you can actually go into the shader spittle file and disable the auto volume option. So if you look in the PDF file, you'll find more information on that. Hair chunk size. We found that it's really important to have the optimal number of hair strands per hair object. So this varies whether you're going with a ray trace method or Scanline. By default, what we do is we limit each hair object to have about 40,000 hairs. So what you can do to manually override this is use the environment variable SI hair chunk size to manually control the chunk size. Brief mention of filtering. This is really important to use with hair to kind of stabilize your renders. And jittering. Jittering is used to minimize the artifacts and a lot of the moire patterns you can see when you have repeating patterns. and this can only be used in scanline render mode. But if you're using scanline render mode, it is suggested you enable the jittering option. So again, that's just a brief summary. If you read the document, you can find more details on each of these issues.